he was launched.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to a live session of AF24NEWS Talks. Thank you for joining us today. I'm joined here in the studio by Dr. Olabisi Deji-Folutile, a director here at AF24NEWS. Thank you for joining us, Ma.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Wisdom.
Well, and thank you to everyone once again for joining us. Today, we are going to be talking about the tragic loss of one of Nigeria's longest-serving leaders, and immediate past president, Muhammadu Buhari. He died on Sunday in London after a prolonged illness, and currently the country is in a state of mourning. Today was declared a public holiday, and the country is mourning the loss of one of its most controversial, but also, especially considering his rise to power in 2015, he was one of the most beloved political figures in the country. So we're just here to discuss, his life and his legacy, to put a page to the life of the former president and ask the enduring questions about what his life meant. And first of all, I would start with that blanket question to Dr. Deji-Folutile. What do you think his legacy is right now?
First, let me join millions of Nigerians and home and abroad and the immediate family of the former president Muhammadu Buhari to mourn the loss of a father, a grandfather, a leader, a great politician, and many other things combined together. We mourn his loss, even though he died at the age of 82, which many could consider a ripe age, considering the what do they call it? The life span.
Life expectancy.
Yes, life expectancy figure for Nigerians, which is put at about 50-something years. So if you look at that, you would think, oh, the man actually died in a good old age. But you see, the point is this: my mom died at the age of 88, and I miss her up till tomorrow. So for your loved ones, that age doesn't matter. You want your loved ones to be with you, if possible, for life. Just that it is not possible. So we commiserate with the immediate family. And like you said, Nigeria as a nation is mourning. We can see that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu ordered that the flag, Nigeria's flag, should be flown half-mast to show the mood of the nation concerning this matter. And also, he has dispatched the vice president and some other senior government officials who incidentally brought the body back to the country for burial. So it's a big tragedy. And looking at your blanket question, you want to look at the politics of the man called Buhari. You want to look at the charisma and the personality of the man called Buhari. You can see that I don't know, especially in the northern part of the country where he comes from, I am not sure if there is any other leader that has such a high standing in terms of political recognition as much as the late President Muhammadu Buhari. And that tells you the kind of figure, the kind of person he was. Mind you, this is someone who had the benefits of ruling Nigeria both as a military head of state as well as a civilian president. As a civilian president, he was in power for 8 good years. And I think as a civilian head of state, he spent about 2 or 3 years. As a military,
2 years, like 18, 19 months.
18, 19 months, okay. So he's a very strong, he's been part of the history of Nigeria as a whole. He fought in the Civil War, so he's part of the Nigerian history, and is not a personality that we can forget too easily, even though death has come to snatch him away, so to say.
I think I like that you mentioned his political legacy, and that's something I want to follow up, especially when we look at the landscape of elections in Nigeria. Former President Muhammadu Buhari was one of the most consistent pollers when it came to elections. Even when he wasn't winning, he was a popular candidate, especially in the northern region of the country, which was even what led in part to the alliance that created the APC to dethrone the People's Democratic Party in 2015. And so I want to, I guess, query what the feeling would be like in that sphere of interest. Like now we are the world regrettably moves on despite the loss of important people and figures, but yet we are going to be, before you know it, talking about the next election and the next election, and yet we have these people who President Buhari has tried to maintain a statesman position when it comes to supporting a candidate or whatever. But how do you think the feeling is among those groups of people?
Right now, I think political-wise, it may appear as if that section of the populace that the former president controlled may be in disarray. Let me put that disarray in quotes right now, because he was somebody that was able to coordinate the northern region. He was a figure that everybody respected. And before anything happened, they were always going to him. Remember that even during the last Salah celebration, the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, former Kaduna State Governor El-Rufai, Nasiru El-Rufai, and some other political figures that have come together now to be talking about ADC, the coalition. They were all in Kaduna to greet the former president because he's a recognizable political unifying figure for them. So I don't know how this loss is going to play out political wise, and I don't know what is going on in the minds of these people right now. Also remember that here was a man that is credited to having minimum of 12 million votes. They always say that he had 12 million votes in the basket, in the bag. So it's like, because each time he contested, he was always getting that huge number of votes, even though the votes were not enough to make him the president, because the votes were usually not widespread across the country. He was always getting them from the northern parts of the country and, places where he was really strong. And I'm very sure that even the coalition people who may have relied on that 12 million votes that is always in the bag, maybe they could be in disarray right now. My own worry is, and my own question is, has Buhari gone? with his 12 million votes, who is inheriting that 12 million votes that is always in the bag? These are the questions, because right now we don't really know if he builds up anybody as a successor that others could look up onto the way they looked up onto him, and if that inheritance of 12 million votes is actually or has actually been given to somebody that we do not know now, or allocated to another strong personality that we may not know now. So really, political wise, I think his death is going to affect political landscape. And like the former military head of state, Abdul Salam, said, I only hope that it's going to be for the better. But definitely his death will have some kind of implications for politics going forward.
I think from it's time to also take a look at the legacy of the former president from the eyes of, the people he ruled. We've heard both glowing tributes and scathing rebukes, so to speak. And I want to ask, I guess, what have we noticed from the cross-section of Nigerians, and what are the reasons for that? What is his legacy in the eyes of Nigerians, everyday Nigerians?
Well, like you rightly mentioned, people have been paying tributes, some glowing, and there are occasions where some people have also said things that are not too favorable about the person of the late president, former president. And that is normal. But what I observe as an individual is the fact that former presidents, present leaders, and all of them have been paying glowing tributes to the person of the late president. And also one thing that came out of all of that for me is the general fact that he's been described as a very simple person, and the fact that he's been described as somebody that wasn't corrupt, even though people saying this could not say that about people that worked with him, or whether he was able to actually control those who worked with him in terms of corruption and other important issues. For example, I found the former head of state's comments talking about Abdul Salam, saying that he knew that the late president was somebody that was trustworthy, even though as a president he could not really say that he had good people that worked with him. You get it? So it's not about the people that work with him now, it's about the person of the president. And as for the normal Nigerians, you are going to describe the president from the perspective of who he was to you. So for Nigerians that are complaining, yes, it is also within their rights to do so, because if they are going to measure the effectiveness of the president based on what life they lived when he was their president, if they felt that he didn't touch them in a manner that made their lives to be better, I think they have the right to talk about him in that particular way. Remember that during the former president's time, we had a series of what did they call it? This economic trouble.
Recession.
Yeah. We had a series of that, and when in a recession, life is not good for people. So, and the current administration, when it came to power, don't also forget the Naira redesign, that when many people died looking for Naira shortly before the election in 2023, those who had bad or terrible experiences at that time, they will talk about it, and they will look at the president from that perspective. So we can't really blame them, and they are different. So I think for me the lesson is that leaders should just know that whatever they do today will speak for them tomorrow, even when they are right, even when they are wrong, or even when people around them were the ones that are responsible for whatever terrible or good experience that those they are leading must have gone through. For example, we talk about the massacre. They say there is no massacre at Lekki toll gate, but we know that up till tomorrow that toll gate has not been operating, to show you the extent and the level of strong feelings about what happened in that place. And so till tomorrow we don't know who gave the order. You get it? So youth, for example, they will always refer to that. Some people will refer to the deaths of the Shiites, people that were killed en masse and buried en masse in 2015. People will refer to things. People will refer to the kidnappings. They will refer to, but at the same time, people will also refer to the rebuilding of areas, Bama local government area in Borno State, for example, which was totally destroyed before the former president took over power. People will also refer to some of the places that were developed in the northern parts of the country when it came to power after the activities, terrible activities of terrorists and all of that. So it's a mixed reaction, mixed feeling. But what I'm trying to say is that people will speak based on their experiences. And I think since we have the good and the bad, it's just a balance.
Well, I think it's also quite notable that President Buhari was the first Nigerian leader to unseat a sitting president at the election, at the polls. You know, it was not something that had been done before, and it was also a moment in history that I think we'll remember him favorably. You know, just as you mentioned, with his austere living style, his charisma, and so many other positive notes about his life. But if it is not too soon to speak towards the nature of the situation, in the sense that even towards the end of his life, the former president was not being hospitalized here at home. And that's also been the case for other Nigerian heads of state. And it should also be of note that the former president just exited power about 2 years ago. And it is just like a different conversation as well for Nigerians who also have, you know, Nigeria is a population that more than 51% of the people are below the age of 18. And I guess I want to ask very pointedly to how this could affect the voting behavior of Nigerians. You know, like when you have leaders that don't really, they're already in the tail end of their lives, and they don't really live to experience the consequences of their leadership.
Well, will I say he didn't live the consequence of his leadership? No. I think he was old enough to see the consequence of his leadership. For example, part of the consequence of his leadership is the fact that he loved Nigeria, but he died in London. That should be a very a very big thing, because if you loved Nigeria and you cannot develop Nigeria to the extent that Nigeria could cater for your health needs, what type of love are we talking about? It's just like imagining that an American president left his country deliberately to access health and died in that other country. It's a slap. It's a slap on whoever was a leader. So that consequence, they may not look at it the way Nigerians are looking at it, the way the younger generation of Nigerians would like to look at it. It may not really bother them because it's something that is normal. It's been normalized. But I think for younger generation, not even as young as the 18-year-old and the rest, even for a younger generation like myself, I will still feel that it is awkward and abnormal for a person to love a country but to die in another man's country, which is also part of what people have been talking about. And some have even gone to a ridiculous extent of saying that they did not envisage that Buhari's body will be brought back to Nigeria, because if he loved London as much as he did, then his body could have as well remained in London. And you cannot blame them. The number of time that the former president stayed in London when he was in power. I did a story as then editor of the Saturday Punch, and I think for the 8 years that he spent in power, the president couldn't have spent less than 2 years cumulatively in London. And that tells you something. I may not be able to be specific, but I knew that he spent more than 1 year cumulatively in London out of his 7-year tenure. So that tells you something. And for the younger generation concerning their voting patterns and the rest, they may look at it that they would rather prefer leaders that develop their country. They would rather prefer leaders that assess whatever the ordinary citizens are assessing. They would like their children to school in Nigeria where, you should be able to eat the soup that you prepare for other people. So, but when it turns out, or when you give the impression that the soup you want other people to eat, you cannot eat it, it suggests that you are probably giving people poison. So they would like to see their leaders do everything, partake of everything that they are getting here. It's part of it, and it's part of the way of actually putting confidence in people. Give it to the former governor of Kaduna State. He enrolled his son in a public school. For whatever reason it was, he did it. That is symbolic to tell you that, okay, whatever you are getting is good for my own child also. I think that is the kind of thing that people would like to see in Nigerian leaders.
Well, I think we've touched on a lot of very important touchstones here today, especially because this is one of the most, I think, the most politically resonant story of 2025 so far. And we want to hear what you think, those of you joining us here today. What do you think about the president's leadership? What are some memories, or should we say some important milestones that you think Nigeria was able to achieve under his leadership? What were some situations that you cannot forget, from his life and times, both from his days as a military head of state to his leadership as a democratic leader of Nigeria? And let us know in the comments. Let's share some stories and remarks, and we'll be here looking through every single one of them. Thank you once again for joining us today. I'm Wisdom Deji Folutile, and once again, Dr. Olabisi Deji Folutile, and see you next week.